Hello and welcome to the next of our lecture recaps. This is a recap of our lecture on risk management. This was the second of our two lectures. So we looked first of all here at the risk management strategy within a firm. And remember, this would be determined by the risk appetite. The risk appetite was made up of the firm's attitude to risk. So that would depend on, for example, the pressure to make sales within the firm, the nature of the business, the background of the board, the pace of the industry, and indeed the reputation of the business. All of those would determine how much risk that firm wanted to take. The risk capacity of the firm was how much risk it actually could take, how much risk it could bear. So the risk appetite is how much risk they want to take and how much risk they can take put together. So the elements of the risk management strategy would be the organisational statement on their attitude to risk, so that would be determined by the two things we just looked at. Their risk appetite would be analysed, and then the objectives of their risk management strategy would be set. They would determine what the culture in the organisation was and how much risk they wanted to take, and they would need to make sure that management took responsibility for the risk management strategy. They'll then have systems in place to control risk and performance criteria to monitor that system. So that will be the risk management strategy within the firm. So remember, we are looking at our risk management cycle from the previous lecture, and part of that was to undertake our risk assessment. Now that would involve our risk identification. So we might look at the market and look at our own business and say, well, where are the risks? So we might do that through brainstorming or consulting external advisors. We might even consult internal audit or indeed staff questionnaires. We'll undertake a pest analysis to look at the external environment, the political, economic, social and technological factors. And we'll think about a SWOT analysis that will look at the strengths and weaknesses of the firm, along with the opportunities and threats that that firm faces. So that will all identify some of the risks facing that firm. We can then measure those risks using expected values or volatility or indeed value at risk. That all will enable us to undertake a risk mapping exercise. So we plot the risks here on our risk map from the likelihood ranging from low to high and the impact ranging from low to high also. So low impact risks that are less likely to happen, so there's a low likelihood of them happening, we might just accept because they're not going to have much effect on us. If we have low impact risks that are highly likely to happen, well, we'll try to reduce those through internal controls. High impact risks that are unlikely to happen, we will transfer through insurance, for example. And high impact risks that are highly likely to happen, we should try to avoid. So when we do this, our risk responses will be to transfer, avoid, reduce or accept. And we can remember that with TARA. Transfer to insurance companies, avoid them by not doing the activity, reduce them by internal controls, and accept them, meaning that we just accept that they'll happen, but they'll not have a big impact. The next thing we looked at was controlling risk. So we control risk in various ways, for example, by diversification into an uncorrelated business. That means that if one of our businesses isn't doing so well, our uncorrelated business may be doing well and that will offset that. So we might do that through integration, so backward integration into raw materials, or indeed forward integration into distribution. Lastly, we could have horizontal integration into complementary or even competitive goods. However, remember those will all be quite related to your industry, so it might not be as uncorrelated as you would wish. So does this work? Does going into uncorrelated businesses work? Well, we've got a problem because we should stick to the knitting, i.e. we should stick to what we're good at. And if we're going into uncorrelated businesses, we may not have the knowledge and experience to make a success. Remember, related businesses will likely be correlated, so backward, forward and horizontal integration may well be correlated with the business that we currently have. And investors are already diversified, so they don't necessarily want us to diversify as well. So other ways that we can reduce or control our risk. Our internal controls will reduce the risk, hedging will reduce the risk, and of course sharing the risk with others will reduce the risk. The last thing we looked at in this session was reporting risks. So this related to the Risk Management Committee. Remember, the Risk Management Committee was responsible for risk awareness within the organisation, risk management policies, the processes involved, and reporting to the board. So how do they do that? Well, they determine the risk profile of the organisation and the appetite for risk. They also review and monitor the risk management policies. They'll communicate that throughout the organisation by distributing the information, and they may well seek specialist advice to make sure they're approaching the risk in the correct way. Ultimately, they ensure that training and implementation of risk management occurs. Now, the Risk Management Committee may well do that through a risk manager in the organisation. They will work with the committee and the board and lead the risk management team. So this will be the person in charge of the risk mapping exercise that we've talked about. They will also implement the strategies set by the Risk Management Committee and monitor and improve those strategies. They'll be responsible for the risk awareness programme throughout the organisation and ensure compliance with regulations. They'll also work with any insurers should the need arise and assure external audit that the risk management procedures are adequate. We'll also then be responsible for reporting the risk. We'll report the gross risk before any controls are in place and the residual risk after controls are put in place. And there needs to be a reporting system to do that. So that should follow the risk management cycle we looked at in the last lecture and should be reviewed annually. Of course, all risk management must be cost beneficial, so we need to do a cost benefit analysis to make sure that that is the case. So that was a recap of our lecture on Risk Management 2.